Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast, everybody. Here we're interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we will be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the journeys of our guests so that we can all better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's episode. We have Arabella Ashfield with us. Arabella is an executive coach and founder of Ascending Motherhood, a coaching practice dedicated to helping mothers navigate the complex transitions of motherhood and work. Drawing on her academic background in positive psychology and a PhD in well-being, she provides guidance on everything from returning to work after maternity leave to building confidence and redefining identity. With a decade of experience in high-performance environments, including 8 years with the GB Olympic cycling team, Arabella understands the challenges of balancing ambition with personal fulfillment. In this episode, we'll be exploring her journey and her insights on making sense of the world and how purpose has led her to empowering mothers to flourish at home and in their careers. Enjoy. Hello, Arabella. Welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Mega to have you with us today. How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you, James. Thank you so much for having me. Just dealing with just a small drama there as we were about to go live, were we not?
Yeah, I love it.
We'll come on to children in a little bit.
Yeah, the total pros that we are, right? Just literally about to kick off, and there's been an emergency, or should we say, just to make sure that everybody that's listening doesn't think that we're blasé about it, but it feels like a real emergency. There were some muddy knees, muddy jeans,
Yes.
Muddy trousers, and a school disco that has to be attended.
Yes, and this is every parent's nightmare, isn't it? The phone rings and the school name comes up, or your child's name followed by school, and you're like, oh no, or nursery, oh no,
Yeah.
Someone's got a elevated
Yeah.
temperature. Haven't you given them Calpol? And this particular one, just as I'm about to chat to you, yes, my son has muddy trousers, and can I drop some off? Well, not right at this minute, but I'm very, very appreciative of you wanting him to have, obviously not for you running around in his pants at the school disco, because that's not a good way to start life. So yeah, all in all, we'll fix that in about an hour's time. So yeah, that's
amazing.
what we're rolling with, and that's
Amazing.
what parents do. They crack on and they sort issues out.
Yeah, I love it. And can you imagine, right? So with, this is a conversation about meaning and purpose, and where over the course of your life's journey you've kind of associated and assigned meaning to things. Like, we could genuinely be scarring a small person right now that like their first school disco memory is, Mum made me go in my pants. I never lived it down.
Yeah, exactly. And also, what's meaningful in a child's life? I can't go to the disco because I don't have any trousers. It's obviously priorities. Yeah. Oh, it's just roll with it. You have to. It's what it is.
Yeah.
But literally, just what was that, like 10 minutes into our initial conversation, and I'm like, I just got to take this phone call. Sorry.
Yeah, bear with caller. Well, listen, thank you for being with us today. Really excited for this conversation. I think the kind of the purposeful experiences that you've had, both personally and professionally, and the journey that you've been on, I think is going to be a real treat for our listeners today. And so I guess it'd be just really great to start. Let's do the kind of the timeline journey experience, really, so that kind of things can unfold. For you, if we kind of start by looking back a little bit, where are some of the kind of the moments that really kicked off your understanding, your awareness, your connection to purpose, those moments that really kind of shaped you?
Moments that shaped you, it feels really big, doesn't it? Because you think, gosh, was this sort of really memorable moment and for a lot of people that is. I think I find myself kind of looking back and reflecting on times and going, maybe that was quite pivotal, or that really like took a twist and a change. And I think some of it was being involved in sport as a child, and then just kind of being quite luckily quite good at that, and I was all right at it, so I managed to do it well enough. but actually just ending up probably going to university, just doing what I liked rather than necessarily what I was actually good at.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of then did a full circle in a way to what I was good at. And I think
Yeah.
so I kind of started off with sport and exercise science as my degree, but I'm not actually particularly scientific or
Yeah.
science based or a hard science person. What I'm far more interested in is conversation and
Yeah.
language. And my only ambition, I think, like if you asked me as a kid, what was the one thing I wanted to be able to do, and it was speak French fluently. That has nothing to do with sport and exercise science. But I loved culture. I loved language. I love the playfulness of that. I love how people use it, and then that led me to kind of doing more psychology based work, and then background to my PhD around kind of, well, what stories do people tell about themselves? How do they
Yeah.
understand themselves through what they talk about? So I think I've looked back and see those sort of moments going full circle, and that's then, if anything, gives me the clarity that that's where my purpose lies in a way,
Yeah.
if that
All
makes
right.
sense.
Interesting. So there's something immediately, even just as you're kind of giving the headlines there, where look at how the dots connect. There's something about choices and what informed choices. So I'm good at some
Mm,
stuff, but I really love some stuff. And actually, I'm going to make a choice in this moment to go with the thing I love rather than the thing I'm good at. But then
mm,
also this kind of sense of how things can kind of come full circle, and even in the choice points within the journey, like I love language and I love people and I love that. There is something about the fact that you used the word love there like 4 times right at the very beginning of all of this. So just talk to us a little bit about those kind of choice point moments and what drew you towards the thing that you like connected with, so you felt, oh, I love doing this, versus, oh, I'm just really good at that, which that's a really interesting kind of moment in its own right.
yeah, and I think there are some people in the world who are really kind of like, I made this choice, it was so clear, and I went down this route, and I think I kind of just went with a bit of a flow really in some regards, and then probably only more recently, um I don't know if that's getting older wiser. Older wiser questionable, but like whether that's a kind of decision later on about definitely going, no, actually this is what I enjoy doing, and
Yeah.
then and making more of a purposeful choice at that point rather
Yeah.
than before being, I don't know, what is it luck that you end up there? It's not entirely luck, it's good, it's decisions. So moving when I was working in elite sport, like moving from different sports, making, I guess, day-to-day choices there around the athletes that I was supporting. But I think I still kind of just went with that and enjoyed it, and it was good. But I think then when I decided that I was going to do my own venture, that obviously is a big decision and is a kind of far more, very purpose driven actually, but very much a kind of an active decision rather than a found yourself there kind of
Yeah.
process.
All right, cool. So let's get into that transition in a second, because I think there's just something really magical about that kind of that shift and that change. um I just want to kind of stay in this space for a moment of, you said like going with the flow and or
Mm.
found yourself there, so it almost feels like a kind of passive or kind of reactive experience to some degree. And actually, I want to kind of nudge you a little bit and go, I'm not so sure how, or I'm interested to know how you experience that kind of passive reactiveness, because I think maybe it feels like there's something else in there too.
That's a good point, actually, because I think maybe now, just as you said that, then I made a very active decision to leave my first, what was my first academic post, off the back of, like, when I was doing kind of midway through my PhD, do an academic post, and I left that to purposefully go and become what was then a performance lifestyle advisor.
Yeah.
And because I had then found that this job existed and it was the applied version of what I was studying. And I
Yeah.
was this really annoying person, but like, yeah, but this is really important. This is how we can support athletes and we can do this, and still believe that. But I think actually, yeah, I did take a bold decision of moving out of that to go and do a job which was completely different, in a really kind of like growing area. And that was definitely a jump, but I also, it was absolutely the right jump to do. And it was a decision that I absolutely loved, and um, was the right thing to do. But it was definitely, yeah, so it was a drop in salary at the time. It
Yeah.
was, which wasn't necessarily all that problematic, but it was quite a considerable drop in salary. And it was then, like, not that that governs me particularly at all, but it was, that's a decision you make. Then it's kind of like, is this what I want to do? And yeah, it was an absolute yes, I do. So that, maybe that actually is far more purposeful.
Yeah.
But I think some of the other flow stuff, like, just, yeah, I started out on an MRes with my PhD, so a master's in research, right, and then kind of just kept going. Like, I didn't necessarily intend to have a PhD, and then actually I was just working really hard, and people went, well, if you kind of keep going with that, you can have a PhD. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So just kind of worked a bit hard. Well, not a bit harder. God, it was very hard work. But yeah, just yeah, like, just allowing yourself to do it a bit, I think, with a
Yeah.
lot of doubt along the way. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't sort of, oh, I'm gonna do this sort of thing. I just sort of did it and was like, yeah, let's just keep going, keep chugging
And
along.
so, like, take us back into that kind of choice moment as well. So, you talked about going to university, kind of go, I'm gonna focus on the thing I enjoy rather than maybe the thing I'm good at. But that actually ended up on a journey into MRes and then into a PhD. So, what was it that you were studying that you really loved? What was it that you found in that choice and
Mm.
that experience that then meant you kind of continued on that journey or deepened that journey?
I just loved, um, why people did what they did, or do what they do. Why do people think like that? Why do
Mm,
they make those decisions off the back of those feelings?
yeah.
And that for me was just very simple. That was interesting. It was more interesting than a training protocol.
Yeah.
Like, that, for me, that was more interesting. Um, for others, it would have been exactly the opposite, right? Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting. I think it's still really interesting when you hear, just in day-to-day conversation, if someone's got, some interesting stories to tell. And people there's always something, like, that's like that people will or won't share, or at what point
Yeah.
they do share something that's really interesting and that's unique to them. And everyone's experience is unique, and it's, um that's their life. Like, what it means to them is really important. So I think that, and now, like I said before, like, I reflect on that now, that's what I enjoy. But I think it takes that time to appreciate what that means to me.
Yeah.
And whereas before I was just like, oh, this is just really interesting, isn't it? Why do people do these things? And because I started to look at, why do people do things like risk-taking behavior? So
Mm,
things like, how do athletes kind of perform quite risky sports, and would do that after an injury? So I looked at that for my dissertation and stuff, and just, yeah, from there, kind of just wanted to explore more of that. And I went on to look at, well, not just what it meant to be a performer, as an athletic performer, but what life as a whole looked like with that. So
yeah.
the bigger things and all of the other things that impact our lives, because we're not just exclusively in one domain. We live our whole lives all of the time, and we
Yeah.
might be better at dipping in and out of those, but essentially those elements can still be at play. So
Yeah.
some people will be really focused in that one moment, absolutely, but there are still other impacting factors. And I was very interested in then the whole person and the whole messiness of life than kind of just the performance element. So that's where I then kind of took that. Yeah.
And so, what was it about this kind of um, this human experience that felt really meaningful to you or felt important to you to kind of to discover, to understand, to kind of generate a greater level of granularity in? What was it that kind of provoked that level of curiosity specifically around that area?
I think there's an element of um, who I've been surrounded by. So, like, your upbringing shapes that. So, when you think about your parents, how they are, the people that surround you, as I've thought about this more recently about sort of female figures that were kind of present in my life were actually really strong, um, educated, articulate women. And I kind of didn't really realize that anything else would exist. Like,
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
I have met some people that are a bit like not like that, I'm be like, okay. I think I was surrounded by people that were quite, yeah, just articulate, bright women, and I found that was a dominant feature, and
Yeah.
I'm interested, like, why, how have they got to be like that if they've grown up in a certain decade or something, or if somebody is less articulate or less assertive with their opinions, like, what's what what are they, where have they lived and where have they been, that means that they are less forthcoming with that. It's not a judgment on that. It's just
Yeah.
an interesting fact. I'm not saying at all that one is better than the other. It's just,
Mm.
what are we exposed to, and why
Yeah.
do those things come about, and why do they then um, nurture some of those qualities in us? Like, we are a product of our experience. So what are we exposed to that bring about some of those characteristics in us as we grow
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that I think, again, is really interesting. So I always think there's always something broader around the kind of, it's socio-cultural, and there's an emotional level to it as well, but all of those things have an impact. So I think that, and current affairs, I've always been interested in that. I think that, again, that provides your cultural context. So they
Yeah.
have I think it's just really interesting. Yeah, because no two people are the same, and
Yeah.
if you dare to look outside of your own, what's your own world view and your own norms, you see something very different, and it could be quite challenging. It could be
Yeah.
quite scary. But if you can start to sort of see why things might contribute to that, I think I find it interesting. But I guess there's a use to that, I would argue. But yeah.
And I love that the kind of the start point here, and as you're answering that question, was, the norm for me was this kind of strong, educated, articulate female role modeling, and almost then looking around and going, huh, all right, so this isn't everywhere. Actually, there are some gaps. Why is that? What's happening out here? Like, why do these gaps exist? Um, and you making a really, I think, strong provocation. Like, if you dare to look outside of, how often are we kind of encapsulate or caught within our own worldview, and therefore every decision, every choice, every insight that we generate is a product of that lens, which
Mm,
can have Lord knows how many different filters applied
yeah.
to it. It's almost like a Instagram post. You don't know what the
Mm,
reality is because there could be so much going on to kind of create the image that you see. So
yeah.
that willingness to dare, that willingness to kind of see beyond that, and then the willingness to explore, that kind of felt intuitively curious to you. But interestingly, it's something for everybody else to kind of just actively consider. Like, what is your worldview? How does that shape what you're seeing in the world around you, and what else might be out there or possible, even if it's confronting?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even just things where, where you don't feel comfortable. I didn't feel 100% at home with my course sometimes, and there were lots of great people on it and really lovely people, but I didn't feel necessarily like I was completely at home in that environment. So where was my where were my people, or where was my
Yeah.
place? And then questioning, like, actually, it's okay to feel that bit uncomfortable, um, because it might look different further down the line. But yeah, you
Yeah.
know, when you realize that you can be in a place and look around and like, oh, this is not quite me, or
Yeah.
this really is me. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
But you're right, it's so many different layers and contributing factors. Like, I think if we all just looked, I mean, gosh, don't want to get too heavy with current affairs, but you know, if you kind of do just think, gosh, if could just be a little bit broader in the way that we could embrace others,
Yeah.
we'd be in a better place, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously that sounds so. Yeah.
Well, no, because I think there's something really connected to purpose for me in this element of the conversation, like the willingness to be able to see beyond what feels comfortable or true for you often
Mm,
needs some kind of anchor around perception and perspective, and some for a lot of people, like having a really deep sense of meaning and contribution can help them stay out of just the kind of the regularity and routine that ends up being really narrow. And to your point, if we just look at the way that the world is kind of polarizing right now, and just there's just this creation of them and us
mm,
literally everywhere, um and like can we step back from that and go, well, is there something greater than all of our own self-interests that we can be in
yeah.
service of here? Because that's really what purpose is asking us to do, isn't it? If we can go, what really matters, and
Yeah.
what contribution can I make to that? Often that is beyond us, it's beyond the self, it's beyond just my small element or part of the world, and is connected to the bigger whole.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and also so it's something that's bigger than us. I'm quite a strong, quite an ardent atheist. So for me, that can be quite challenging. I was thinking about this ahead of this. Is it, you know, that can be quite a challenge because then there's the chance sometimes to think, well, what is there beyond
Mm.
us? Just the chance that we happen to be on this planet, kind of feeling. But actually, if we can take that moment to go, um, what's more important, that we have this division and those sorts of things, but and also to sometimes to say, to flip that, to flip what you were saying there and kind of go, is it important? Like, it really isn't that important. Like, let that go. You
Yeah, yeah,
know, like, let it
yeah.
go. It's not that important. And I, you know, that really varies for all of us
Mm.
at different points, right? But sometimes it also is just let it go.
Yeah.
That's not that important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the magic here of what you hold tightly versus what you don't. And are you
Mm,
even really aware of why you hold something really tightly or not? And that, um, the ability to let go is often comes from being able to find perspective in something. I thought that this, like, and we've spent time working with elite athletes, and often the chasing of the goal, like the chasing of the dream of like winning the medal and holding that really really tightly, and almost whatever it takes to win kind of mentality just incurs a huge amount of cost. And so being able to find a different perspective, be able to see more than just that one endeavor, and be able to let go of some stuff actually gives you the exact thing that you were trying to go after in the first place. It
yeah,
almost feels paradoxical in nature. Like if I let
yeah,
go of some stuff, I'm actually more likely to get the thing that I want.
yeah, yeah,
Like how
absolutely.
did that show up for you in your kind of transition for, yeah, just not from a research perspective. You were talking about like there was a specific focus and then it kind of broadened to the messy wonderfulness of humanity, but then also going from a, well, I'm in a research sense here and now I'm going into applied context too. Like how have you noticed that kind of ability to be able to see more and see beyond just kind of delivery of outcomes as helping people live more, kind of fulfilled and satisfied lives?
I think there's an element of being open to that. If you can sit with where somebody is kind of just either battling with that or hasn't even thought about it,
Mm.
and you're kind of in a place to be the person who can have some perspective, or can challenge. I think for me, I always felt like I wanted to bring a bit of, in a way, some mediation, so you could bring together two people's differing views and see some common ground, but also then to say, um, to offer up alternatives, to offer up different perspectives. And I think that's valuable because it challenges other people to do that. Um, and that's where you get some growth from if you do think differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to do that, but I think it's a challenging one at times. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you do that for you? How does that happen for you? How do you continue to kind of like challenge that kind of perception and that worldview and be able to see more?
I mean, I guess there's a couple of things. I think I still work in elite sport, and my role is to kind of question some of that, is to provide some critical thinking. So I can still take some of the academic world and really go, how is this going to work in an applied sense? Like, is this realistic? Is that what's the context behind that? What's the understanding? I think working with different people and people who are, as you know, I worked at British Cycling for a good number of years, and you're working with really driven, outcome focused people, and sometimes then it can also just be to sort of put pause on some stuff initially and just sort of say, well, how else might that be considered or thought about? And I think you've got to be trusted to do that. But then also, I think who you surround yourself with is really important, isn't it? Like my husband is great at doing that. He will, we're both able to have really good discussion about stuff and
Yeah.
provide alternative perspectives. And um, I'll joke with him that he likes to throw in a sort of social hand grenade every now and again. It's like, oh, Chris just pulled out the pin and lobbed that one over the fence, and see how any of us react to something. And it's done in jest, but it is quite a funny way of just sort of, throwing out alternative perspectives and stuff. And I think that's really healthy as well. And I guess through my work with individuals, there might be things that people come from different perspectives. They come from different places. So they have got different views to me, and
Yeah.
that's fine, because I'm not there to change that. I'm there to sit and say, well, what's your reality, or what do you view as your reality, and what do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
So I think I still get a good amount of that challenge. um but it's a good point, actually, to sort do you continue to find that challenge somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting point.
Because
We'll
I
just have
hear
to
you almost.
arrange another chat.
Because
You can-
I'm hearing you describe three different things actually. Um, one is like in the nature of the practitioner that you are. So that kind of wrestle between academic insight and applied reality, and that continually helping you find a kind of a perspective. Because as one advances, so does the other, and the kind of the interconnection between the two, and you being in the middle of that, I guess, provides provocation. The second, you just talked about the people that you surround yourself with. So there's
Mm.
something about the wonderful willingness of your husband just to go, lob, have that. All right, cool. Let's see how those pieces fall back down together again.
Exactly.
Um, but actually, like be willing to kind of take that on in the way that's intended, which is, am I locked into a particular perspective? And then the third bit I heard you talk about there was the kind of the work that you're doing, and the reaction and interaction with those that are in front of you on a day-to-day basis. And this it's the second time you've kind of referred to this, um, being in a space without judgment.
Mm.
Like, it's not about judgment about right or wrong, or it's
Hmm.
about actually being able to say, all right, is there something else that we're not seeing, or actually how might something else be true for you? And you being able to hold yourself in that space of non-judgment actually allows you to be able to see more too. And let's just kind of touch on that for a moment. Like, in order to be able, how do you create a space within yourself that means you can stay in a place of of compassion rather than judgment? Because that, like, lots of people will be going, oh yeah, like, not being judgmental, that's me all day, and then we'll take the mick out of somebody for like their haircut as they're literally walking down the street 2 seconds later. It requires something to be able to actually hold the tension and stay in that space.
Because it's not my job. In that moment, that is not my role. My role is in something entirely different. It's to hold space. It's to be quiet. It's to hear what I had somebody say was shameful to her. And we've all got opinion, like, as well. I don't shy away from saying to opinion, like, well, we all have an opinion. That's fine, because also people are coming with the opinion of others.
Yeah.
Like, how much those rest on us, it can be very heavy. So we have to acknowledge that there is opinion, because everyone will have one. We'll have, about the hairdo through to something really, really profound. Like, it's there. But in that, and I will have that. Of course I do. Yeah. But it's not my job in that space at all. My job is to yes, to hold the space. And I was thinking about this and describing it to somebody the other day. It's also for the women that I work with, for a good few of them, it's to hold their strength.
Yeah.
Because if they lose that, it's to hold it so they can grasp it.
Yeah.
Because you can lose a lot of yourself and your qualities and your skills, and actually what is your strength of character. And sometimes you have to get back to that. My role is to just allow that to kind of come about, either by saying nothing or by asking some good questions.
Yeah, so let's touch on that. Let's like create a bit of a shift here in terms of, so there's this kind of been this kind of journey with a couple of really intentional moments of actually there are some pivots away from where I am right now into something new, because actually that space or that environment feels like it's a place for me to go and explore, or to learn, or to be able to kind of add value in a different and more meaningful way. But you've fairly recently, it's not super recently, just had another inflection point. I'd really love for you just to talk to us about the journey into that inflection point, what that is, and how that's really kind of creating a sense of purpose for you right now.
So I spent 10 years in elite sport, supporting athletes, 8 years at British Cycling, 6 as a practitioner, and then about a year and a half, 6.5 months, year and a half after that, working with a little bit more aim to kind of look at the environment and work with some of the senior leaders to kind of try and enhance some of that experience, because I cared very deeply about how people were experiencing their time there, and experiencing it as a person, not as a rider. Yeah. And I got to a point where I'd done the job for a long enough time, and it needed someone fresh and new, and I was kind of at a point of going, I've done what I can do. And but also I felt very strongly that I had got good strengths, good qualities in and around my ability to have those conversations and with my coaching. And because I had had quite a rough journey of maternity leave, I, a couple of years when I'd started out with my Ascending Motherhood journey, I spoke to the CEO of Maternal Mental Health Alliance, and she was describing different types of postnatal depression. And she said they also believe there's this kind of element of high functioning, and and I was like, I think that was me. I think I was the person like, yeah, let's get going, do stuff, but also had really low mood. And I thought through this, I was like, why am I not? I'm not a business coach person. It's not where I come from. It's not what I'm particularly interested in. But actually, there's a lot of people that could just do with somebody to listen to. And in my maternity leave, I remember going to the health centre with my child, and speaking to the centre manager, and she said, I don't think you're depressed, I don't think you are struggling that, I think you're just really used to having been in this really fast-paced job. And she was great, and she just sat there and listened to how I was, and she said, you've just come from being in this place of just absolute rapid fire to being at home with this small bundle of just doing my best to keep it alive. And that's how I felt. I just felt very much like, I just nothing more than I just have to keep this thing alive. And that was really disconcerting. And I kind of, having gone through that year, I was just like, these are the people that need some support, because they're not necessarily, don't have clinical diagnosis or anything like that, but they just need a bit of help and a bit of support. So that's where it came from. And I think those were probably pivotal moments as well, actually, along the way, to kind of go, actually, this is what I care about, that I know that I can do, and that's where I need to spend my time. Yeah, for sure.
And so what has that then enabled in you when, as soon as you started to become aware of the kind of the integration of, I have knowledge, I have skill, and I have lived experience, and I kind of want to be able to bring that to other people? What did that kind of then enable in you?
Gosh, I feel like I should say, yes, that just led me to, driving forward. And I'm not that type of person. I will always doubt whether I've done something correctly or I've made a right decision. I will always be thinking about that. I will never get ahead of myself. I'll always be thinking, I'll come away from this going, oh God, did I say something that sounded a bit, but I just thought, no, it's the right thing to do, and it's what I want to do, and it's something different, and it is a bit of it's different. It's going away from where I've been. It's going away from where I've kind of had some quite solid grounding in. But actually, it does make you go, but that doesn't matter. What does matter is what I'm choosing to do, because this is actually what is important to me.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of that conversation still. Like, it doesn't matter, that stuff, because I'm in a different, I'm doing something different now. And that's fine. And just being a lot more content with that. And I'm not scrabbling for something else. I do have a post-it that says, I can see it here, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Because I just had to have a word with myself earlier this year. It's just like, you just can't. You just remember that, because it's silly. It's just insane.
What
You
were
can
you
get yourself
comparing
into a
yourself
right old
against?
trap about it.
Yeah, where does comparison happen for you? Because I think lots of people can relate to this idea of, how do I get ahead of myself? Because that feels really difficult. And it's a really powerful quote, is comparison being the thief of joy. So how is that showing up for you? Where were the comparisons playing out?
Oh, I think LinkedIn's a great one, isn't it? So is Facebook. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's just where you choose to be in it. I could quite happily go and make myself miserable in the space of about 20 minutes, I'm sure, if I kind of look hard enough at at what people are doing, because it's their best life, and we all know that. So you just have to make a choice about, is this sensible or not? And no, it's not. I've got better things to be doing. I've got better people to be around. I think as well, when I was thinking about what we might be talking about, and I feel like humour is a really important part in this, to separate some of it, like to separate this really like deep, heavy stuff we're talking about, to the absolute ridiculousness of some of those things, and life generally. Like, for me, I have to be able to find that humour. And I think, like, if you can I have to ground myself in going, can we all just recognise this is utterly ridiculous? And that kind of just, do you know what I mean? Like, it just brings you down. Like, I think it brings you to a normal grounding. And I think I've decided as well over the last few years as well, there are good people that you want in that space for some of that. So you need to know who are those people. And I have, a couple of people who I get voice notes from telling me something that's happened, and it's really funny. And I love that. And it's so important that you have somebody who just goes, can just be an absolute leveler for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I've kind of come round to something else there, but I think the stopping the comparison bit is done by humor, it's done by honesty, and it's done by cutting through the BS, isn't it? It's got to be, because, and I think my point is that parenting is an absolute leveler for that.
Yeah.
Do you know, like
Yeah.
when you've found, yogurt stuck to your skirting boards and you're wiping it off for the 5th time in a fortnight, like that is just life, and you have to just think, God, what am I
we
doing?
found this was probably about a year ago now. Bearing in mind, my little girl's nearly 9 and my little boy's 5. About a year ago, we were planning on doing some work at our house, and we were kind of checking stuff out in the kitchen. We were like, "What? Why is that? What is that stain on the ceiling? Where's that come from? What is that?" And we realized that we'd given we were using some cowpole, and we were drawing up some cowpole, and we put it next to Isla. So Isla's now nearly 9, right? We put it near her as we were drawing it up. She'd grabbed one and, like, poof, just, as kids do when they're dead little, she grabbed it and she bashed it against her high chair, and obviously all the cowpole just shot up, and some of it hit the ceiling. And the reason why it looked like a stain is because it had been there for half a decade.
It's great, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
and I think, but to your point, like, parenting can, like, the thief of joy around parenting is comparison, for sure. Like, how are my children behaving in comparison to other children? How are my children eating in comparison to others? How are my children sleeping in comparison to others? How am I parenting my children? How am I disciplining them? How am I educating them? How, like, the list can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, can't it, in terms of comparison with others? And it almost loops right back to your original point, which is, we are all unique, therefore they are all unique, and so it doesn't matter necessarily what I'm doing with my child comparison to what you're doing with your child, because what you're doing with your child might not work with my child. So what's the point in the first instance?
Absolutely, yeah. And you might have some boundaries within that, like, that's fine, but you're right, because they're all so different. You are so different. The context is so different. But I also speak to so many women in that return to work space, and I think that first year is when you get so much opinion and judgment. And one of, like, my resounding things is, like, it is your choice who you listen to and who you don't. Because you could just, you're talking crap. I'm not even, what are you on about? I'm not no thanks. Like, it is your choice, and kind of, as soon as you say something, like, but you can choose. It might annoy you 100%, and it might rattle you for a while, but ultimately, whatever. Not going to listen to that. But take the ones that you do, like, that's fine too. Like, I'm all for some free advice. If it's good, I'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work, fine. But I'm not going to be the person that's kind of just, like, dismissing one or another. You give it a whirl. We're all giving it a whirl. I think if you can find some honesty amongst it all, and that's the best thing, isn't it, is when you've got some good friends who will just absolutely call it how it is, then they're really useful. Like, you absolutely need those. And
how much do you find,
they're vital.
How much do you find the honesty and the playfulness actually goes hand in hand? In that, when somebody's kind of calling out the reality of actually what it feels like not to sleep for however many days relentlessly, and kind of realizing that the pants that you're wearing have been the same pants for more days than you would actually like to count. There's a hilarity in the honesty, isn't there?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Becomes the kind of leveler and just enables everybody to kind of move forward.
Yeah, like, and I think there's something about being really brave to be that person, like, because you're absolutely right. The comedy is what makes it normal, and the honesty is what makes not, and it is comedy. It is really funny. Like my friend saying to me, "Oh, isn't it funny when you become a parent? Like, you know, when pre-child, you'd pick up a jumper and sort of look at it and think, oh, you know, that needs to go through the wash. Now you look at it, sort of dust it off your shoulder, think, oh, it's got another day in it, definitely. You know, and those sorts of things. And you have to hold on to those nuggets of stuff.
Yeah.
I had a voice. I'll tell her later when I say I had a voice note this morning from one of my mum friends. Don't know if that sounds a bit condescending. She's a good friend, irrespective of her being a mum. There you go. And she said, yeah. So she just opened up the voice, 9 seconds long. Hi, Nana's bought so and so some jingle bells. I think I now have tinnitus. And in the background, her kid then goes, and you could hear it going ding ding ding, and the kid goes, yeah, just like comic timing. Like, it's brilliant. Like, and you have to be able to share those moments with people because they're great. They're just great. And I think they are like, being a parent is an absolute leveler. Like, when you've wiped enough bottoms and changed nappies and, like, you know, like everyone has that level, that's a leveler, right? It's got to be. And then you've got to find the good people, the honest people, and give the humor, because people need that. They need that when they are sleep deprived. They need it when their kid is kicking off in the middle of Morrison's. Like, just you've got to be that person. Absolutely.
You know, this might sound like really random, but that's part of how my brain works. Is I've got the kind of the Harry Potter, the kind of the Defense Against the Dark Arts with the boggart, and the boggart takes on the form of your greatest fear. Do you know Harry Potter?
Yeah, I think I've seen this bit.
And so it comes out of the box, and it's your greatest fear. And the way in which you deal with your greatest fear is, and the whole, the kind of the enchantment for the kind of the spell is ridiculous. And you basically turn whatever is your greatest fear into something that's totally comedy. So the spider comes out and you put roller skates on the spider, and then the spider can't stand up because it's just got 8 legs flailing all over the place. And it's kind of what we're talking about here. Like, there's just a sense of, you know, comparison to some degree is, how am I doing? Am I doing okay at this? Like, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. Like, what you know, where am I in this process in terms of how good? But we're looking to the wrong stuff. We're looking externally to us, and to some degree, there's a fear of, am I good enough at this? This matters to me. It's important to me, and am I doing it right? And like, A, there is no right, and B, actually, how do you turn that fear into something just a little bit more, to your point, or a little less daunting or damaging? It's to kind of find the humanity in it, find the honesty in it, which actually is freaking hilarious most of the time. Most
of the time it is. And if you're not comfortable with that, like, if you're not that, like, you can receive it, great. But if that kind of doesn't come naturally to you, I think the other thing is finding the joy in it. So kids are very entertaining, but they don't realize it, right? Like, we'll all know that. And as an example of this is still funny, but I think it's just an absolute joyful moment. So at the school, my son and his friend at the school, they had the ovens weren't working for a period of time. So they were having to lay on like a different spread every day. And I don't even know how this happened. It was just funny. But they had like jam donuts. I mean, these jam donuts were like adult jam donuts. So, I mean, these kids must have been high as a kite by the end of it. But what was amazing was that my son came home and was like, we had this thing, and it was sugar on it. And he was like, it was big. You had it, and you bit it, and it had jam inside. And it was just like, he and his mate, you can imagine, can't you, them sitting at each other going, this is tasty. Oh my God, it's got jam in it. Just that wonder. Look at it, like, the
wonder,
wonder of
yeah.
like, this is incredible. That is the equivalent of getting an upgrade on a flight, isn't it? Like, mate, we have
Yeah.
just got like,
Yeah.
but for a 5-year-old, they're like, it's got jam in it. And I just love that. I was like, that's just the cutest, because it is the equivalent of us going, geez, I've just found a tenner down the back of the sofa. Or
Yeah,
like, you know, mate, we've just got an upgrade. Like, I love that. And they are absolute joy moments, but they are also funny. I think it's just so
yeah,
cute.
love it. Love it. So take us a little bit kind of leap of faith time, Arabella. Like, how does this journey to this point? So this kind of sense of focusing on what you love, but then acknowledging that there are some kind of spaces and some gaps that actually you find interesting and curious, and kind of moving into places where you can understand more, but then from understanding more, wanting to apply more, and then getting to another step of kind of experience where you're like, you know what, I've got some skills and some kind of insight into something that feels even more meaningful than where I was before, because it's kind of been lived by me personally in a different way, and there's still gap here. There's some opportunities to be able to help and make a difference, and so you've kind of focused in on this new venture and being able to support mums in that space. What next? Like, what where do you feel this kind of inner sense of purpose is carrying you forward into the unknown?
I mean, I love what I do. I don't regret that for a moment. Maybe there'll be a time when I don't want to do that bit of it, but the doing bit of it is the conversation and with people and being with them for that. But ultimately, well, it's actually quite a small amount of time, but it's over the course of maybe 6 months or so, and it's an absolute delight to do that. At the moment, that's an absolute pleasure. It's a pleasure, it's a privilege, and it's incredibly rewarding. I mean, that sounds a bit me, doesn't it? I always think that's a bit interesting, but I think it's just the right thing to do as well. Um, it's the right thing to do, and I think when I have thought about purpose over the last few years, for me, it's leaving the world in a better place, but it's also leaving it better than how you found it. So that process is being, yeah, with those women, to have those conversations, and it's not all doom and gloom. Like, not every, you know, it's about how do they enhance themselves as well, as much as it is this is hard work or whatever. It's also about, actually, how do I be better at this, how do I do this, and that's a really cool place to be. So I think for me at the moment, it's quite doing what I'm doing. I love doing the other stuff around it. Like, I love the kind of business development stuff as well. Like, that's really interesting. It's learning, it's new. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm not, but it's interesting. Sometimes I hear from people like, oh, I'm happy to continue doing this until I retire. And I'm just a bit like, oh gosh, yeah, I'll do something else. I don't know. I don't know what that will be.
And I love that kind of aspect of so I was somebody shared a video with me, a colleague of mine shared a video with me where they talked about the difference between a life lived trying to achieve a destination and a life lived by just being in the dance, as they described it. And one of the things they said was, you're not trying to there's a reason why they call it playing the piano. Right, you're not trying to achieve the end of the particular piece of sheet music. The or orchestras don't come together, and operas aren't written, or whatever kind of music isn't composed for you just to get to the end. It's being in the experience of generating the music. It's being in the dance where the kind of the real richness of human experience exists. And that really spoke to me, in that it doesn't matter what you do, and how you do what you do will just organically grow, shift, and change over time, because your experiences will grow, shift, and change over time. But understanding why you do it, that can be something that can really enable you to stay in the dance and not chase the outcome. Like the fact
Yeah.
that it's about curiosity and learning, the fact that it's about people, all of these things that have just kind of been central in the journey that you've had to this point in time. So who knows what comes next? As long as those things sit within it to some degree, you're going to be in the dance.
Yeah, and it's a really it's a lovely way of thinking about that, isn't it? It's a really nice metaphor to think of. And but I think it's also really easy sometimes to think that, there'll be a lot of people out there that kind of go, God, well, they've got it sorted, or they're just so in the moment, they're fine. And it's kind of like all right to be like to go sometimes. I'm not I'm not great at doing that. I'm not great at being in the moment with it. I'm not great
Yeah,
at um playing the music. And sometimes, we've all, we've got a roof, you need to keep a roof over your head. You do need to pay the bills to some extent. So there's always a degree of constraints, as well as and kind of moving within those constraints, but we do have choices. So how do we
yeah,
do that? And I wouldn't ever want anyone to think, oh, well, because that's the comparison bit then, isn't it? Oh, well, they've got it all sorted. They must be fine. Look, they keep
yeah,
telling me to live in the moment. And you're like, oh, God. You kind of just, there's a chance to go down that route. And I think it's really important to kind of sometimes just stop and like appreciating for what you've got. You don't, what's the phrase that's like, oh, it escapes me properly now, but want what you have, not have what you want.
yeah,
That's another way of coming back to like, actually what I've got is fine. And
yeah,
it's not the best, it's not the worst. But actually if I can sit with that, then it's fine. And that is still in the moment a bit. It is still about the journey, but it's actually kind of going, "Do you know what? This is okay. This is all right. And I'm happy with all right. I don't need that or whatever it is. And I enjoy doing this bit. But I do have to say that sometimes to myself, just, yeah, actually, this is fine. This is all good.
yeah,
I get to have great conversations, meet people, and I can choose who not to speak to as well. You know,
yeah,
like we have that choice sometimes. And if you don't, then question it, right?
yeah.
Like that's when you question, no, this is not good for me. I'm leaving or jumping ship or whatever it is. So yeah, but I think
And
I
I think,
agree with you. It's the playing bit is a nice place to be.
yeah, for sure. And it's part of just kind of lowering the threshold of resistance to life, isn't it? Like the point that you're making there about finding the compassion in the it's
Mm,
okay, and connecting back with choice. Like, what is the choice that I'm making here, or what are the choices that I feel are in front of me to be able to make here? I think that's where the real agency comes in our experiences. Is, are we acknowledging the choices that we're making? Because
yeah,
actually, more of the time than not, we have choice, even when it doesn't feel like we do. So can we
yeah,
see and own the choices that maybe are in front of us, that can help us stay in the dance to some degree, or move down the
yeah,
road if that feels appropriate.
yeah.
um
Seeing your choice is an interesting one, isn't it? How how able are you to do that? That's
mm,
really tricky. Sometimes people
yeah,
can't and need some help to
yeah,
do that,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because if you can't see it, then you haven't got the full range to know what action to take, I think. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Right, I think we're going to pause here, because there's just something about people being able to see choices that feel like a really important, like, call to action to kind of just sit
Mm.
with. So, ladies and gents, when you think about being in the dance or being on the journey, what are some of the choices that have enabled you to be where you are? And maybe what are some of the choices that you're not seeing that could be there? But either way, do it with compassion and not with comparison. Thank you, Arabella, for being with
Lovely.
us today. Like, awesome conversation. Massively enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah, an absolute joy to kind of just share the bonkers ride that is, and the messiness, the messy ride that is life. So thank you so much. Pleasure to
You are
speak to
welcome.
you.
All about the messiness.
All about it.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. We appreciate your support and would love you to subscribe, rate, review, and recommend if you can. It makes a massive difference. Equally, if you're interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your unique sense of purpose, or that of your teams, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.